When you divide decimals, sometimes there's a special situation where you end up with a 0 in the quotient, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So in this example, I'm dividing a decimal, 15 and 25 hundredths, by a decimal, 5/10. The first thing I need to do is make this decimal on the outside into a whole number, and I do that by moving this decimal place one position. So since I moved the decimal one position on the outside of my division sign, I need to do the same thing on the inside. And that means in my answer, my decimal point is going to go right up here. So now it's time for us to start dividing. So this 0 in front makes it look a little confusing, so I'm going to cross that out. So we can see we have just 5 out here. So the first thing I want to look at is how many times can 15, right here, be divided by 5? And 15 can be divided by 5 3 times. 3 times 5 is 15. So what I'm going to do is subtract that, and I see that I get a 0. Now the next step when I'm dividing is going to be to bring down my next number, which in this case is a 2. So now I have 2 divided by 5. Well, 2 is not enough to be divided by 5, so I have to put a 0 up here in my quotient. We put that 0 when there are not enough things that we can divide. So it's a 0. 0 times 5 gives me 0, and I'm going to subtract that, and I get 2. So now I bring down this 5, and I have 25. 25 divided by 5 goes 5 times. 5 times 5 is 25, and when I subtract that, I have 0 left over. There's nothing to bring down, and there was no remainder, so I know that's the end of my problem. Let me show you another one. This one has a little bit of a different situation. And what I want to show you before we start this problem is some things about equivalent decimals. This decimal here, 541 thousandths, is actually equivalent to this decimal. By just adding an extra 0 on the end of it, I haven't changed it all, but I've added another place value position. And this decimal is equivalent to this decimal. So it's possible to add zeros to the end of a decimal and not change its place value, or not change its value at all. And that's going to be really important when we solve this problem. So again, my first step here is to take the decimal on the outside and move my decimal point to make it a whole number. So I'm going to move it 2 decimal places, and so I have to move the decimal point inside my bracket 2 places also, which means my answer is going to go right there. Now my first step is going to be to divide. I have a 0 here, which I can't divide by 2, so I'm going to scoot over to this place. 5 divided by 2 goes 2 times. 2 times 2 is 4, so I'm going to write that and subtract it. And when I do 5 minus 4, I get 1. My next step is going to bring down this 4, which gives me 14. 14 divided by 2 is 7. So now my next step is going to be to multiply this. 7 times 2 gives me 14. And I'm going to subtract that and get 0. Now the next thing I do is bring down this 1. So I have 1 divided by 2. I can't divide 1 into 2 groups, so I have to put a 0 here. 0 times 2 is 0. I subtract it, and I still have this 1. Now the next thing that I want to do is I need to bring something down. Okay, this is a remainder. I'm not finished yet, but in decimals we don't have remainders. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another 0 to the end of this. It doesn't change my value. Remember we did this example up top here? So it doesn't change my value, but it does give me something to bring down. So now I have 10 divided by 2, which goes in 5 times. 5 times 2 is 10, and when I subtract that, I get 0. So there's nothing left over here. There's nothing else to bring down, so I know that that's the answer to my problem.